If I told you that Shawn Ryan was probably a prominent drug dealer at one point in his life, you wouldn't believe me, so I'll just let him tell you for himself. I'm not bashing Shawn Ryan, I just find it interesting, and I think you'll also find it equally as interesting. I'll also be drawing a correlation between what he's saying and a 3-letter agency that he worked for.
It's not a good period in your life.
You know about this?
Nothing good happens in Colombia.
No, nothing good does happen in Colombia.
No, I do know a little bit about your troubles. And that was a rough period for you. Explain why and why Colombia.
Well, originally I went to Colombia because when I joined the SEAL teams, I had always wanted to go to Team 4 because I wanted to do the counter-drug ops. Well, then, 9/11 kicked off, obviously, and that wasn't a focus at all. And so when I was in the agency, I'd broken up with a girlfriend, and so I decided I wanted to travel, and I was just infatuated. I mean, those were all the documentaries I was watching when I went to the recruiter. That was the only thing going on at the time was Panama and kind of the counter-drug situation down in South America, which a lot of that was in Colombia.
Since documented in shows like Narcos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I decided I wanted to go check it out down there. And so I
mean, that's crazy talk. Just like as a pin in this, that's crazy talk. Nobody looks at a show like Narcos or Panama and says, yes, I want to go there. That's all normal people are like, thank God that's down there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was for a number, I wanted to see, I wanted to be in a jungle environment. And so I went to check it out, had a great time. And so I just kept going back, all the way past my time at the agency.
Now, the CIA doesn't exactly have a great track record with cocaine.
In 1989, the Kerry Committee publishes their final report detailing substantial evidence of drug trafficking by the Contra rebels and concluded that U.S. government officials were not only aware of the drug operations, but in some cases hindered investigations and prosecutions of drug traffickers within the Contra support network. The committee uncovered evidence of Panamanian dictator Manuel Noriega's covert support for the Contras and his ties to cocaine traffickers, much of which would later be used to justify the U.S. invasion of Panama later that year, as well as one witness on record alleging CIA agents themselves were directly involved in loading cocaine onto airplanes.
Then it turned into, we had just kind of spoken about addiction to adrenaline. And so I was going down there doing a lot of stuff that I shouldn't be doing, cocaine. And then once I left the agency, I kind of started building a network down there. And it was exciting to me. I was overseas, building my own network, kind of felt like I was kind of running my own operations.
What kind of operations?
Drug networks. And so I wanted to see how deep into the kind of narcos network I could get myself. But
this was not for crime fighting.
No, this was
for crime committing.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And so I kind of started at street level and built a network out and went to clubs and met people and found my guys and started testing cocaine and finding the best stuff and I found it. And that lasted for a couple years, and I would just bounce. I mean, it was really, I got a lot of satisfaction out of the adrenaline and just seeing how much I could embed myself into these different cultures. And so then I started flying all over South America. I started going to Peru and starting to build network there, in Dominican Republic and Panama, all over Colombia, all over the country.
I'll defer to you on this one, but how easy do you think it would be to go to all these different countries as a white dude and set up a drug network, which I assume is probably controlled mostly by other organizations already, and him having to deal with gangs?
Costa Rica, and then I started looking up the most dangerous places you could go in the world, and at the time it was San Pedro Sula, Honduras. So I went there and started I didn't get very far there, but that was my life for several years.
Wow. And the product was cocaine, and you would find what, like, would be dealers, people to distribute it.
I would find dealers,
make it.
and then I would find their dealers, and then I would find where their dealers get their stuff, and I got to a pretty high level.
It's a miracle you weren't killed.
It is a miracle. It was, this is what I do for a living, though, and so
That's true. You had some pretty superior training.
I was pretty good at it and pretty fearless at the time.
So when you're talking to your old Navy SEAL buds or Blackwater buds, and you're down there, and they're saying, "What are you up to?" What were you saying?
I would just tell them.
I've crossed over to the other side.
I wouldn't tell them exactly what I'm doing, but they knew. Everybody kind of knew, it just, I started losing friends. I know the conversations were like, oh yeah, he's down in Colombia and nobody really hears from him anymore. And I would resurface every once in a while. Sometimes guys would come down to see me. They wouldn't last very long. They would head back out.
It doesn't surprise me that he's notifying, I guess, what would be ex-Special Forces guys that were visiting him of what he was doing. If you do a little bit of research, you'll find out that drug activity within the Special Forces community isn't something that's new. There was a video of a commanding officer giving a speech to what I assume is a group of SEALs, explaining how they're going to be cracking down on drug use within the community. There was a couple Delta guys that got murdered over the past couple years, a couple bodies that were found on Fort Bragg. I believe that had something to do with drug trafficking. There was a book published in 1993 titled Big White Lie, the CIA and the Cocaine Crack Epidemic, written by a former undercover DEA agent. The author charges that the Central Intelligence Agency and other U.S. federal agencies were perpetuating a score of drugs on the American streets while they profess to be fighting the war on drugs. So I'd like to know what your opinion is on what he said and whether or not you believe the three-letter agency could in some ways be involved in anything that he was describing, or was he just, got out of doing what he was doing and decided to kind of go down the wrong path for a little bit and I guess just had all the assets in place and was able to fly around and do all these things and meet all these people, being who he was. So let me know what you think about that in the comments.